Wow, Ryan. I was watching this unfold last night, and I have to say it was riveting in the way that you can't take your eyes away from a disaster. The question is, whose disaster is it? And Nancy Pelosi has weighed in on this pretty strongly. But tell us where we are, where the vote looks to be.
Yeah, Chris, let's first set the stage and help our viewers understand what we have in front of us. So essentially what Democrats are trying to decide here is whether or not they're going to lift the threshold of 60 votes that it requires to basically pass anything outside of the Senate. That's what this cloture vote is that you hear bandied about often, which is a very technical term about the process in the Senate. Basically, even one member of the Senate can force 60 votes, or at least force a vote on whether or not it will require 60 votes. So that's the vote that's coming up here in less than an hour. And this is essentially what Chuck Schumer is saying he's going to allow to happen. Allow 60 votes to move this piece of legislation to the next stage of the process, where it will then be able to be passed with a simple majority of only 51 votes. That would allow every Democrat to vote against it, but then the legislation still be passed and avoid a government shutdown. And Chuck Schumer made it very clear last night. These are two bad options. He hates this continuing resolution, but he is much more worried about the possibility of a shutdown. Listen to what he said last night.
A shutdown will allow DOJ to shift into overdrive. It would give Donald Trump and DOJ the keys to the city, state, and country. Musk has told everybody he wants a shutdown because he knows it will help him achieve his horrible goal of just decimating the federal government from one end to the other.
Now, not every Democrat feels that way. In fact, there are a lot of Democrats who believe that the Senate should block this measure from going forward and then put up a big fight. Listen to what former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said in a statement online. She said, quote, Donald Trump and Elon Musk have offered Congress a false choice between a government shutdown or a blank check that makes a devastating assault on the well-being of working families across America. Let's be clear, neither is a good option for the American people, but this false choice that some are buying instead of fighting is unacceptable. And so the question that we're weighing right now, Chris, is now that Democrats have had time to sleep on this and think about this, will there be the 7 votes necessary to allow this to get to the next stage where it will be a simple up or down majority vote? Right now, it appears that that's the case and that a shutdown will be averted, but anything could happen between now and when that vote takes place here in less than an hour.
Yeah, let's see where the pressure points are. Thank you for that, Ryan Nobles. Okay, I've got such a great panel here. Michael, I'm going to start with you. Schumer says, look, we're living to fight another day. That what would have happened with a government shutdown would shift DOJ into overdrive. You just heard him say that. Did it instead shift into overdrive a Democratic divide? What do you see is going on here?
Well, the majority of this party, voters, activists, even members, honestly, are against this CR. Because the reality is that voting for this CR is like drinking acid because you're thirsty. It makes no sense. And I think that Nancy Pelosi also weighed in today and said that Leader Jeffries is correct. Democrats should not vote for this in the House or the Senate. And so if we're...
You think Leader Jeffries is ticked right now?
Well, he has to be. He did the hard work of keeping his members in line, which they were. I think that as you look at the Senate and you look at a midterm election in a year and a half, we should be thinking about what all of this means. If Democrats can hold the line here, you have a terrible economy that the American public is currently going through with Donald Trump, and that helps us get to a majority in the House in a year and a half. That should be our goal. The reality is that all the things that Chuck Schumer said would happen in the shutdown are already happening.
So Julie this morning, Punchbowl wrote this, quote, let's be blunt here. Democrats picked a fight they couldn't win and caved without getting anything in return. And there's a reason Republicans put Democrats in this position, because they know Democrats would eventually cave. And they did. Here's the lesson from this episode. When you have no cards, fold them early. Was this just a big strategic mistake?
I disagree with that profoundly. We had all the cards in the world. The cards are you don't vote to advance the CR. And Chuck Schumer folded. We need fighters. We don't need folders. And Chuck Schumer is a folder. That's not the leadership that the Democratic Party is demanding right now. The Democratic Party across the board, as you said, activists, elected officials, rank and file Democrats want somebody to stand up and say this is not something we're going to be part of. We are not going to give an inch to Donald Trump. We're not going to own any part of this disastrous agenda. And Chuck Schumer just allowed Donald Trump if this goes through, to impose tariffs without consulting Congress so that every time you pay more for toys, you pay more for guacamole from Mexico, you pay more for cars, Democrats will own that now because they gave Donald Trump the authority to be able to do that. That's not the party that I think I want to belong to, and that's not the party that Democratic voters across the board want to belong to. We need fighters. If Chuck Schumer will not fight, he needs to get out of the way and put somebody else in charge who will fight.
Wow. OK. Bernie Sanders certainly wasn't happy last night. He was also on this network literally right after Chris talked to Chuck Schumer. Listen to what he said.
If you do nothing, you sit back and you say it is going to be terrible. And that's right. A shutdown will be terrible. But our job is to put the onus on the Republican president, the Republican House, the Republican Senate, the people who control the government. They are responsible. They've acted in an undemocratic, unprecedented, unilateral way. They've given us an offer, take it or leave it. That ain't the way democracy works.
Elise, even if you can't win, is there value in fighting?
I think that tactically, this is a tough battle for Democrats to lose on, and to have the government shut down and the economy already in the dire straits that
So
Trump
you think
has
a
caused.
shutdown would potentially be worse?
I think it's just a poison pill. I don't see what good choices they really have right now, because they're going to look.
But you have to make a choice.
The economy is going to get worse
choice.
if the government shuts down. One thing that Donald Trump excels, I would say, maybe his number one skill, passing blame. And I don't know that I think Democrats are capable right now of actually blaming Republicans where blame will be due if this bill goes through.
But I'm sorry, let me just say something about that. Democrats are not in charge of anything. It is the Republican economy. They control literally the federal courts. They control the executive branch. They control the legislative branch. All of this is on them. And you see that at town halls where voters are showing up screaming at Republican members because they know whose fault it is. There's a Quinnipiac poll out yesterday that says the vast majority of voters would blame either Trump or a Republican Congress for a shutdown. Democrats, only 32% would be blamed. So the point is that Democrats had the Republicans where they wanted them. And if they
And
ever
32% is probably pretty much Donald Trump's hardcore
right.
base,
And if they knew how to communicate, which, by the way, is something else the Democratic leadership is awful at, they would put the blame squarely where it belongs, which is on the Republicans. And yet, instead of doing that, they are handmaidens to the Republicans if this CR continues to go through and gets to the president's desk. I just don't understand for the life of me why Democrats would do this kind of assist for a Republican Party that wouldn't even allow them to come to the table to negotiate any of this. They handed them this you-know-what sandwich and said, either pass it or don't pass it. You have no other say about it. It's infuriating.
You know most of these folks, Michael. You worked alongside them. So we've all got this sheet. It says there are two definitely yeses. We knew about John Fetterman. Chuck Schumer was the surprise last night. Then there are 11. So 6 more would have to decide to vote yes. Do you see 6 names here?
I don't. I see 4 possibly. So you should assume, for instance, that the leadership team votes with Mr. Schumer. But I think, for instance, Senator Schatz probably votes against it. I think Jackie Rosen probably votes against it. Gary Peters could go either way. Let's say
he's retiring, so.
Yeah, so, right. So Jeanine Shaheen, again, probably votes against it. And so I think they're close, but I don't see 6 votes on this sheet.
Then what?
Republicans control Washington. If you go to any random city in any random state in America and ask a random person who runs D.C., they'll say Donald Trump. There's no reality that says Democrats will hold the bag if the government shuts down. That's just not based on any poll that you've seen, and just based on the reality of the way that Trump has sold his victory in November, which is he controls the whole thing. And so for Democrats, let's be smart. To your point, we had no way in terms of what this bill was going to look like or anything in it. So why would you support it? It makes absolutely no sense.
At least Tommy Tuberville said exactly the opposite. Let me play that.
If they shut it down, it's their fault. The ball's in their court. Let them do it. But at the end of the day, they don't have enough guts to do it.
Well, we're going to talk about guts. We'll see. But what about the blame game?
I still think that it's going to come down on the Democrats. And I just don't see a way out of that, given the Republican messaging apparatus. I think you nailed it when you said that Democrats just are not communicating well these days. And that's part of the post-election confusion, that they have to get together. They lost an election because they didn't have a coherent message. And right now, what is their message?
And listen to the message from Donald Trump. He praised Chuck Schumer today, writing, "Congratulations to Chuck Schumer for doing the right thing. Took guts and courage. Trump called it a really good and smart move and then said this could lead to something big for the USA, a whole new direction and beginning." All right, I'm going to ask both of you briefly. I mean, seriously, the last thing I think you want, maybe as a Democrat, is for Donald Trump to praise you. What does this mean for Chuck Schumer?
It's not good. I mean, look, the reality is that he has a caucus that wants to fight. You have a number of talented younger members like Murphy and others who really want to lead the party going forward. And so he has to show that, notwithstanding being in his mid-70s, he can lead the party in the Senate. What he's done this week has not shown that. In fact, he's done the opposite.
Julie, you kind of indicated you think he could be in trouble.
Chris, I'm an establishment Democrat. I am not a flamethrower. I've been coming on your show for probably 20 years on and off. If you ever see me this furious about anything, and this is not about ideology anymore. It is about knowing how to fight. It is about taking it to Donald Trump in ways that resonate with the American people. We had them on the ropes. And what does Chuck Schumer do? He throws him a lifeline. For the life of me, I don't understand the strategy here. It is not Chuck Schumer's job, Mr. Leader, to govern. It is your job to obstruct, because the people governing right now are not the Democrats. So for the life of me, stop pretending that you have a say in any of this and start standing up for the American people, because right now, throwing him a lifeline is doing the exact opposite. You are complicit, Mr. Leader, and you've got to stop acting that way.